morning again. I failed to introduce myself this morning. For those of you who are definitely first-time visitors to the CREC, my name is Blaine Schatz. I'm the director here at the Carrington Research Extension Center and one of the research agronomists on staff. The trial we're in front of at the present time is a trial where we're looking at the issue of seed quality, or more specifically, looking to evaluate the ultimate response, in terms, especially stand establishment, in regards, in correlation to the state seed department germination tests. CREC is distributing an article that Steve Sebesta, the deputy director in the North Dakota State Seed Department, put out in the latest North Dakota Seed Journal, which is their department's newsletter, to touch on the issue of seed germination and the maybe the questioning that some might have in terms of the accuracy of the lab tests, in terms of how the seed lots actually perform in the field. We've worked with issues related to pea seed germination for multiple years, from one perspective or the other, in the sense that maintaining high germination pea seed with a lot of legumes, but probably a particular pea seed, can at times be challenging. You have a thin seed coat. It's a crop that is maybe newer to many seed processors, and when handled improperly, you can really cause negative consequences to the ultimate germination of the seed lot, the ultimate vigor of that seed lot for the next season's planting. Issues such as rough handling, processing during cold temperatures, and so forth all influence those things. But anyways, the State Seed Department, apparently, as this article will go on to say, has had a number of seedsmen maybe challenge the results of their tests at the State Seed Department, in terms of the perception was the seed in the field is actually a seed lot that has tended to be, in their eyes, establishing a higher population than what maybe the State Seed Department's germination test would suggest. And so Steve contacted us here at the CREC late spring. It was actually late May, so this trial was planted a bit later, and asked if we would be able to help out to evaluate in the field some of these contrasting germinations amongst seed lots. So what we did is, he sent me the list of the seed lots that they were working with peas. I looked at them to try to find a set of samples that would represent a distribution of germinations, basically from high to low, so that we had a gradient by which to evaluate the ultimate plant stand establishment in the field. Besides that, we needed to have adequate seed in those remnant seed lots in order to establish adequate replication to make that assessment. And that proved very problematic. Though they had 300 plus seed lots, we had a difficult time getting the distribution of germinations within a particular variety that we had desired. But we were able to put together 24 seed lots that are planted in this particular trial. And some of them we have limited gradation. We maybe only have 3 to 5 seed lots that go from a high to a medium and maybe hopefully a low. When I say that, maybe in the upper 80s, low 90s, low 70s, and then around 40% germination or so. What we have in front of us with the yellow stakes is the seed lot in the first replicate, where we had the greatest distribution and the nicest stepwise gradation in terms of germination of a particular seed lot. With the variety Agassiz, we were able to have 8 steps defined amongst the different germinations where we had adequate seed. And we go from roughly, I think it's 95 or 94% germination down to 27% at that last one there. Now, because we knew that we would have variable degrees of competition resulting from these different germinations, we have buffer plots between each of the plots of interest. Those buffer plots are established at what would be our recommended plant population, or what we use on most of our trials here at the CREC, and that represents 330,000 pure live seeds on a per acre basis. So there is a skipped row here you'll see, so don't, most of those guard rows you're going to see, that represents the standard density that we try to establish here at the CREC. Now, because of this limited seed quantities we had in our attempt to get 4 replicates, all of these plots were established at 225,000 seeds per acre equivalent. 225, so it's lower than what would be recommended. But at least that's was a standard that we were able to achieve with all the seed lots. So as you look across the resulting stands in this first replicate, that represents the establishment based off the germination of those seed lots, where 225,000 were put down. Okay, what are we seeing today? What we did is we went out here multiple times to take stand establishment notes. The first time soon after initial establishment, and then about 10 days later, another count was made to define what we would say final established stand. And first thing I would say is that upon initial germination results, or initial stand results, the stands that resulted were highly correlated to what the State Seed Department test would suggest. Because let's say if at we're 225, if we were looking at with the germination adjustment about 200 and let's say 11,000 plants per acre, we pretty much got that. What was interesting is that on Agassiz in particular, where we had the best opportunity to assess this, is that our final populations with the lower seed germinations did actually end up being higher than what the germination test would suggest. The initial came very close to what the germination test would suggest, but the final stand was typically 15 to 20% higher than what the germination test would suggest, which would maybe come into agreement with what some of the seedsmen were saying in terms of maybe a critique of the State Seed Department. I would caution that that final stand probably represents a moderate number of weakened seedlings, because on our initial stand and final stand with those that were germinations of, let's say, in the mid 70s to the low 90s, the initial and final assessments were largely the same. With those seed lots that are on the 27, 35, 45, 47, and so forth, those germinations, as I said, differ greatly from the initial to the latter, which I think does show and correlate to what that article would want to say, identifying some of the weakened seedlings. Now, yes, the plants established themselves. It did take longer to emerge, and there may be some problems with that. We're talking with Julie a little bit, but maybe there's some opportunity for some pathogens to begin to express themselves, some root rots, for example. Ultimately, you're going to have more varied and non-uniform plant development, which can be challenging when it comes to harvest, operations, and so forth. But again, this is the first year evaluation. We would hope to do this again with the State Seed Department. I would imagine that they would like to see this work continue. And knowing that we would be willing to do it, I'm sure we're going to work towards trying to have them save more seed or obtain more seed, so that we can hopefully achieve a more desirable distribution of germinations amongst multiple varieties, to have maybe more replications. But again, this is something we would anticipate continuing. I think already we are learning some things, and that's basically that first of all, this germination test, I think the State Seed Department are showing to be very accurate in terms of establishment in the field. Those germinations, seed lots with lower germinations, ultimately we are achieving those and maybe a little bit higher, but it's taken us longer for the plant or the stand to ultimately establish itself at that slightly higher population, and that population may be representative of a few more weakened seedlings. That's a quick review of that particular trial. Hopefully this is, I would say to our audience, this is an example of some of our production general crop management research that we look to do with our pulse crops to complement germplasm evaluation, pest management, nutrition, and so forth, and trying to address some of the basic practical issues that the pulse industry and the growers face.